That's fine. All right, are we good to go, Maya? Okay, great. Right. Welcome everyone to this Festival of Leo Full Moon Meditation meeting. Glad to have all of you joining us here today. Those of us in the room, of course, also those of us who are joining online. We are now just under 24 hours away from the exact moment of the full moon, which occurs tomorrow at 2:26 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And we can think of the time between our meditation today and the exact time tomorrow as a period of safeguarding, with the aim in mind of cultivating and sustaining a deeply spiritual and subjective alignment. This alignment can be likened to the creation of a reservoir of spiritual substance within ourselves in the spiritual sense. Tomorrow at the exact time, we take this reservoir of self, that is all that we have, all that we are, whatever measure of spiritual consciousness we have managed to bring through via heart, mind, and body, and offer it forth for the strengthening of the group and the carrying forward of the divine plan. Safeguarding is an important part of any sacred ritual, but it must not be seen as an end in itself. Whenever the sacred is brought down with any degree of purity into the mundane, great care is needed, lest the depth of its spiritual perfection, that is, its power and its magnetism, is lost, ruined, or destroyed. At the same time, the effort to safeguard can itself become the crystallizing factor, if not approached in a spirit of service. And so to truly safeguard requires a clear understanding of what it is that makes a thing spiritual and how that which is appropriated in meditation can be utilized for the good of the group. And so as we begin our meeting today, let us keep this core purpose of our work in mind and proceed in a way that is as deeply reverent and spiritual in a vertical sense as it is aflame with that desire and determination to serve and to do good right where we are. And so briefly, a few announcements about our upcoming meetings, just for everyone to note. We have our next new moon meeting, Tuesday, September 2nd at 6 p.m. Then following that, the Virgo full moon meditation meeting on Tuesday, September 17th at 6 p.m. And of course, the exact time, as I said, is tomorrow at 2:26 p.m. EDT. That is the exact time of the Leo full moon. So actually, I'm just going to turn this fan down because it's just a little bit too loud. Give me 1 second. So, the full moon, as many of us know, occurs each month at the time of a very important macrocosmic alignment. Objectively speaking, the moon is illumined by the sun, and the sun's light is reflected back upon the earth via the moon's surface. In this great objective symbol, we see a powerful representation of the right relationship between solar and lunar forces and the great redemptive imperative that underlies the whole science of esotericism. Subjectively speaking, the full moon is the highest and most intensest point of the cyclic meditation of our planetary logos. This brings his entire body into a state of cosmic alignment, affecting all the many grades of lives within his sphere, which is our Earth, and especially the human. His meditation is, we are told, carried forth upon the cosmic mental plane, something of which we can have really no conception, other than through its very dim, not dim for us, of course, but for its very dim reflection upon and through our own systemic mental plane, that place whereon spirit and matter, as we understand them, blend and meet. So at the full moon, the entire atmosphere of this mental plane is illumined. And this facilitates the creation of a lighted bridge between the spiritual and the mundane worlds. And this macrocosmic occurrence is a tremendous aid to our work in meditation, which likewise seeks to bridge across the diverse and fiery energies of the mental plane. We are told that man is the place where three fires meet, and that this meeting occurs by virtue of the monastic principle, of which he is said to be a complete expression. In man, these three fires coalesce on the plane of mind as three major centers. There is the lowest fire, which we call the mental unit, also the concrete mind. Its domain is the very human ideals and thought forms which we know well. There is also the highest aspect of man's mental constitution, which we call the monastic body, or the higher mind. This center is abstract, it is formless, and it is we could say, the subtle reification of what, for lack of a better term, we call a spiritual idea or an intuition. Now, uniting these two high points on the mental plane is a third factor, which is called, in the ageless wisdom, the sun of mind, which mediates between the solar energies from above and the lunar forces below. This sun of mind is the incarnating soul. So now, in order for the soul to apply this mediating power fully, it must apply itself to the many dualities and polar opposites within the world of form. So that means it must externalize itself and it must become objective. Now, the externalizing of this principle, its objectification in form, is one of the goals of our meditation work. Through the manifestation of this mediating fire and through its application in the three worlds, humanity gradually makes its way to a better and more beneficent solutions to world problems, for they begin to work with that unifying factor which underlies everything we see and know. Now, macrocosmically considered, the evolution and externalization of this middle principle is one of the primary aims of solar evolution and even of the evolution of the one above our solar logos. We are told that this great life seeks to bring about the incarnation of the cosmic Christ on planes totally inconceivable to us. Now, while it is important to remember that such macrocosmic events are largely, or maybe even you could say totally beyond our comprehension, they are not really separate from us or from our evolutionary imperative. For we, that is our planet, our humanity, and even our very small group here this evening, are all intermediary units in a great chain of hierarchy, which extends from the very highest to the very lowest, unifying all within the all, that is, all the parts within the whole. This is embodied very well in Rule 5 for group initiation, which states in part, the macrocosmic whole is all there is. Let the group perceive that whole and no longer use the thought, my soul and thine. And so this whole mystery of self, macrocosmic and microcosmic, and its relationship to the whole is a most occult mystery, one which is very germane to humanity, to the sign Leo, and likewise to its opposite sign, Aquarius, which is conditioning our dawning age. And so before we examine these themes in a bit more depth and as a preliminary to our meditation, let us take a moment to sound the affirmation of the disciple, which should be on your screen if you're online, and those of us in the room, we have our yellow cards, which you can use. I am a point of light within a greater light. I am a strand of loving energy within the stream of love divine. I am a sacrificial fire focused within the fiery will of God, and thus I stand. I am a way by which men may achieve. I am a source of strength, enabling them to stand. I am a beam of light shining upon their way, and thus I stand. And standing thus revolve and tread this way, the ways of men, and know the ways of God, and thus I stand. Leo is a sign which highlights the sanctity of self-consciousness, and it challenges us to look more closely at our conceptions of self and individuality broadly. It asks us, among other things, to consider how this concept of self, which is a deeply spiritual phenomenon, factors into the attainment of group consciousness. So while selfishness is clearly in contradiction to the basic evolutionary trend towards group unity, individuality itself is a great spiritual fact and is rooted in the creative imperative of deity. The tension between these is something that must be resolved, and until it is, we could say it constitutes part of a great mystery. Perhaps we could call it the mystery of subjectivity. Evolution proceeds by virtue of the subjective making itself objective. Now, this is true in both macrocosm and microcosm, wherein both a solar logos as well as the unit, the man or the woman, are said to be evolving through the medium of objectivity. Objectivity, as we know, is always produced by and through the medium of some subject or thinker. So in the logos, this self or subject exists at 3 levels, and we refer to this as the triple sun. In the logos, this self becomes objective through the incarnation of what are called 7 heavenly men, who are for this reason called also sons of necessity or desire. They are bodies necessitating. They exist because of the necessity for objectification. Now, these 7 lives, actually themselves form the objective solar system. Now, in man, the microcosm, we also find a triple self, which evolves through the medium of the soul and by way of its fully objective expression, which we call the threefold personality. Now, Leo challenges us not only to reconsider our conception of self and its objectivity, but also what this means for our understanding of group consciousness. Leo and Aquarius astrologically form the 2 ends of a single axis, and so can be considered, in esoteric astrology at least, as opposite poles of one sign. And so what this implies is that self-consciousness on one hand and group consciousness on the other form in some sense an integrated whole. Now, deeper reflection on what this whole they form is really challenges us to evolve our understanding of both group and self. And frankly, it also challenges us to evolve our understanding of duality generally. Now, this reflection prompts us to move beyond an understanding of group consciousness as simply a congery of individuals, or as simply the sum total of its units. We might ask, what does it really mean to consider the group itself as a divine unit? What is the nature of this unit? And if it is true that groups of human souls, as the ageless wisdom tells us, form actually the lower centers in the body of a heavenly man, how are these centers used and to what end? And importantly, after that reflection, we can then bring it back and ask, what do all these group realities mean for a unit? Yet the mystery of self or subjectivity, as we could say, this sort of conundrum, this question of self and group and their relationship, it actually goes even further beyond just the nature of group consciousness. And so as we seek the ultimate truth on the matter, that is the ultimate question of who or what is the self, esoterically speaking, as we seek that ultimate truth, and of course, keeping in mind that for us, ultimate truth is really actually totally out of the question, we can turn towards the occult method, which reasons always from the universals to the particulars, from the macrocosm to the microcosm. So Blavatsky, whose exposition of the esoteric philosophy was expressed in forms very closely allied to the Indian, describes this highest concept of self as Atma, the seventh and the highest principle in man, which also that same principle in the cosmos is called Purusha. And so this is consistent with the position of what's called the Advaita, or the non-dualist school of Indian philosophy, which safeguards one of the highest and perhaps noblest of esoteric truths. That is that self, or Atma, and Brahma, or reality, are one and the same. That is, subject and object are one. And while Purusha might be conceptualized as the self or the reality which pervades the universe, Atma is the self which is subjectivity writ large within that whole, but also is that whole. So, taking this down to the very sort of human consideration, the Tibetan writes that for man, the monad is the first and highest principle. And it can be visualized, he says, in one of the ways it can be visualized is as an auric egg around the entire greater scheme of man. That is, it is man in his totality as well as his highest aspect. Yet getting more specific, he clarifies that the psychic nature of this monad or this ray is dual. So it is Atma Buddhi, self and its vehicle, which are one, non-dual in essence, are always one or non-dual in essence, yet always dual when considering the monad, which is in process of evolution or objectivity. Of course, for us, all of us as monads are in evolution and objectivity. Thus the importance of this dual consideration. So on the plane of mind, though, he writes that this self, this sort of highest self in a purely spiritual sense, is focalized and evolving through the soul. And so that soul constitutes the middle aspect of self, we could say, rather than the first or highest. But all of that aside, we could say that the esoteric philosophy brings perhaps the most clarity to this question of the nature of self and the human being by detailing his place within the cosmic scheme and as the fourth creative hierarchy as an important factor in logoic, that is solar logoic objectivity as well. And of course, the details of these correspondences are numerous and can be found in A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. But the germane point to our theme in Leo is that one, self is at some level a ray or reflection of the absolute. Two, that self is distinct from its objective expression. Three is that this objective expression is a vehicle of evolution. And four is that the nature of the self is revealed through an understanding of its place within a group, which is part of a greater life, whence that group derives its purpose, its direction. So all of this is leading to the much more immediate question of what does all of this tell us about who we are today as serving disciples, as human beings, and as souls in incarnation? And how can we practically aid in the implementation of the plan in the immediate cycle? Well, both goal and method are highlighted in Leo and embodied quite well in the declaration of our earlier mantra that we just spoke, and thus I stand. It is not we, the personality, who stand. It is we, the self, the soul, the thinker and creator of the objective form. It is we who know not selfishness, we the soul who know not selfishness, who seek only the will of that life which animates our group. The one who stands is we who strive to stand as hierarchy, in fact, to stand. In fact, even as the masters of the wisdom stand, for they are the true lights within a greater light. They are the true love within the stream of love divine, and they are the true sacrificial fires, focusing themselves within the fiery will of God, of which that mantra refers to. And so through our attempts to stand thus as they stand, we become a source of strength for others, we shine light upon their way, and we ourselves can become that way of achievement. We build a lighted bridge so that humanity as a whole, that is humanity as a self, as a unit, will one day follow an analogous spiritual pursuit. And so as many of us realize, humanity is today in a state of real existential crisis and is in many ways being challenged upon the Leo-Aquarius axis. The question of who is the self is a central one, and humanity is working its way gradually to greater clarity. But what is perhaps most consequential is that the present crisis, I suppose I could say what is most consequential is the degree to which the present crisis is forcing humanity to examine the question of self in terms of its relationship of the self, of individual selves, to a whole. This is a very obviously conflicting question. It throws the unit into a great state of conflict, as we are seeing. But the higher aspects of Leo can and are being discovered through their relationship to Aquarius, and this holds great promise. We could consider this astrologically if we go back to that vision of the two signs forming the ends of a single axis. It is in some ways an adjudication between polar opposites, which is going on. And this adjudication, this willingness to bring together dualities is something which is very much needed in our world today. Humanity is discovering in this regard that such an adjudication, which is really a treading of the Buddha's middle way, is less a matter of decentralizing or working with the energy of negation than it is with making a new identification with a higher ideal. And so working with this energy of identification rather than with negation brings the will aspect powerfully into play. And this method affirms the truth that the glorification of the higher has to occur through its at one-ment with the lower. And this is brought about through the medium of the soul, which is the only truly self who can establish right relationship between the lunar and solar principles. The attainment of true self-consciousness by way of centralization requires therefore ultimately an understanding of oneself as an active agent of the plan. And so with regard to our work here tonight, which is specifically performed through occult meditation, we must also strive to work from the center, rather than just from below as the aspiring personality. While it is very natural for the spiritual seeker to conceptualize meditation as starting from below and gradually working our way upwards towards the goal at the top, it's important to keep in mind that the occult approach actually works not with subjectivity or towards the attainment of subjectivity. Of course, it does in one sense. But the ideal is that it works not with the subjectivity, but as that subjectivity. It aims to facilitate a reification of self through identification and through an understanding of self as group through a right expression in the world. And so this whole question of mystic versus occult, head versus heart, above versus below, objective versus subjective, all these specificities which the occult doctrine brings us are very important considerations, and they do aid us to more fully understand how to effectively serve in the occult sense. But it's important to keep in mind that all these questions they become misleading in one sense. For the question of right service is much bigger than simply intellectual and discriminative capacity. Yes, that's one part of it. But the question of either or, this or that, is subsidiary to the much more important question of how can I become the soul in body, heart, and mind, and bend every will to the working out of the divine plan. This is ultimately the reason we are here tonight, and every method, every pedagogy, every rule, and every bit of spiritual advice must be understood simply as a means towards this end, which is to aid the man or woman to function as a soul and to play their part in the manifestation of the plan. And so let us now proceed with our meditation. The keynote of the full moon approach to the hierarchy. He who faces the light and stands within its radiance is blinded to the issues of the world of men. He passes on the lighted way to the great center of absorption. But he who feels the urge to pass that way, yet loves his brother on the darkened path, revolves upon the pedestal of light and turns the other way. He faces towards the dark, and then the 7 points of light within himself transmit the outward streaming light, and lo, the face of those upon the darkened way receives that light. For them, the way is not so dark. Behind the warriors, twixt the light and dark, blazes the light of hierarchy. Letting in the light. We affirm the fact of group fusion and integration within the heart center of the new group of world servers, mediating between hierarchy and humanity. I am one with my group brothers, and all that I have is theirs. May the love which is in my soul pour forth to them. May the strength which is in me lift and aid them. May the thoughts which my soul creates reach and encourage them. Alignment. We project a line of lighted energy towards the spiritual hierarchy of the planet, the planetary heart, the great ashram of Sanat Kumara, and towards the Christ at the heart of hierarchy. We extend the line of light towards Shambhala, the center where the will of God is known. Higher interlude. We hold the contemplative mind open to the extraplanetary energies streaming into Shambhala and radiated through hierarchy. Using the creative imagination, we endeavor to see the three planetary centers, Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity, gradually coming into alignment and interplay. meditation. We reflect on the seed thought. I am that, and that am I. Precipitation. Using the creative imagination, visualize the energies of light, love, and the will to good pouring throughout the planet and becoming anchored on Earth and prepared physical plane centers through which the plan can manifest. Use the sixfold progression of divine love as the sequence of energy precipitation, Shambhala, to hierarchy, to the Christ, to the group of world servers, to men and women of goodwill everywhere in the world, thence through physical centers of distribution. Lower interlude. Refocus the consciousness as a group within the periphery of the great ashram. And together sound the affirmation of love. In the center of all love, I stand. From that center, I, the soul, will outward move. From that center, I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group, and throughout the world. Visualize the downpouring spiritual inflow released from Shambhala through the hierarchy and streaming into humanity through the prepared channel. Consider how these inpouring energies are establishing the pathway of light for the coming of the world teacher, the Christ. Distribution. As the great invocation is sounded, visualize the outpouring of light and love and power from the spiritual hierarchy through the 5 planetary inlets: London, Darjeeling, New York, Geneva, Tokyo, irradiating the consciousness of the whole human race. Let the point of light, from the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center, where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Om. Om. Om.